Hey everyone, Sam here. This will be an instructional video to go over installation and removal of stabilizers, quick disconnects, give you some tips on methods for easily releasing them from each other. In some cases, people have done certain processes and orders that have resulted in the quick disconnect becoming too tightened down to the stabilizer at the connection point here with the pin. And what happens is people have this too tight, and when they go to remove the stabilizer, the entire assembly comes off. There's a really simple way to avoid that happening. Several people in the past have found that something is too tight and then have used, say for example, vice grips, or have used pliers and have chipped or marred their powder coating. That's all avoidable. So I'm going to show you a couple things here that are really simple. I'll also go over the weight system and talk about what to do if that's too tight, if you can't get the weights to remove, because this screw here, this 5/16 24 by 1.25 inch, so it's 1 1/4 inch length screw, can be tightened with an Allen wrench and can be gotten very tight in this outsert. The reason it's 1.25 inches, and this has come up a lot of times as well, is so that we can get more than 3 ounces of weight on here, because some people will be using this as a side stabilizer and they're going to want more than 3 ounces. They may need 6 or 7 ounces. Well, this screw can hold that much. So if it's too long, if you're only using 2 ounces on the front stabilizer, and you find that that little bit that extends bothers you, you could cut that off. You could get a 1-inch screw at a hardware store. Again, 5/16 diameter, 24 thread count is what you need. Alright, so I'm going to go over first the quick disconnect. So what you want to do when you have one of these, getting it installed on your bow, is start off with secure a location for your bow that isn't going to move. Then you know everything is going to stay in place. So you can hand tighten to start, but hand tightening will not be sufficient to get the amount of torque that you need here. For it to stay tighter, then you'll be able to tighten the stabilizer down to it. You want this to have a greater degree of resistance to turning. So it's hand tightened in. Now, this is the important step in getting this to the degree of tightness that it needs to be, but not too tight. You're going to want some kind of a lever to give you rotational torque, to give you leverage to be able to accomplish that. You could use something as short as this. This is a carbon fiber rod, 3/8 inch outer diameter. I have a longer bar here. It's solid aluminum, also 3/8, works really well. I'll just show you using the aluminum one. I think it's probably more common that someone would have this around. So insert that through the quick disconnect opening, the pin opening. And at this point you now have a lever that is capable of producing a lot of torque on this QD. The bow is secure and stable, it's not going to move. So you can start to tighten here. You really only need to get to the point where it resists and you see it not really turning anymore. You don't want to muscle it past that. You don't need to. You'd be surprised at how tight this already is. So maybe just the slightest bit of additional tightening, stop. I don't have a torque pounds feet per inch adjustment or level for this, and it might be difficult to accomplish given that we're not even using a socket or anything standard fastener wise. We're just using a bar inserted into an opening like that. So you got the QD at that point very solid, very secure and tight. However, the reason I am saying is not to over muscle it is because given the amount of rotational force you could apply with a lever this long, you could break the adhesive bonds. You're going to be able to apply a tremendous amount of force. So don't over tighten that, but tighten it down to the point that it will not rotate when you do this. So you now have the QD pin, of course, on your stabilizer. Insert that and get this snugged up. Once that's snugged up, you only need to do a small amount of hand tightening, and both this is very tight to the QD, so the stabilizer is now very secure. At that point, No matter how much shooting you do, this is not going to come off. This will not fall out. This will not come off unless you then rotate it back by hand. But you didn't tighten as much as you did the QD when you used the rod. So the QD is now tighter to the riser than this is to the QD, so when you go to loosen the stabilizer, it comes right out. That's the key, is you have a greater degree of force here applied to give that level of tightness and that level of tension there. And as you can see, the QD is designed so that you have very little amount of turning required to get it tight, and then you literally have about, let's see, maybe, yeah, that's about 1/8 of a turn. We've often said a quarter. It's not a quarter. It's less than a quarter. You'll have to bring it out slightly more to get it back on. But so that hand tightening is all it takes. It will stay. You're good to go. Now let's look at weights. So if you have everything on here like this, and let's say the weights are in place already. They should be. They typically would be. So I'll thread these weights back on if I can get them straight. Here. Alright, got one going on. And we'll put all 3 weights in place, and I'll show you some things that I wouldn't do when this is all set up, and then we'll talk about what you should do. Alright, so weights are in place. At this point, I would not take an Allen wrench and try to tighten that screw. Why? Because everything is connected. If you tighten this screw, you're going to rotate the screw into the base or to the bottom, if it's not already bottomed out, of that outsert, which will then start to rotate the entire assembly. You will then rotate the stabilizer so much that it tightens down inside that QD joint beyond the point that you can hand release it. So you don't want to tighten your weights while it's all part of a single assembly like that. You want to take this off. And if you want to tighten or loosen your weights, you do that by holding the stabilizer in your hand. Depending on how the weights themselves have been tightened together, you may be able to grab the weight stack, turn it, and have it plus the screw come out, depending on how these were tightened. However, that's not a sure thing. It may or may not work, depending on how the weights were tightened against each other. What I recommend doing is just taking your Allen wrench, putting it into that socket set screw opening, and turning it. Now, if it's tight like mine is right now and I can't hold it, what do? We don't put a vice grip on it. We don't put pliers on it. We find something else that's around the house. This is a really simple tool, and most people are going to have something like this on hand. This works great for hand manipulating stabilizers and other products, QDs, whatever you might need to be putting pressure on. So I would say is, the best bet is to wrap it up nicely and use this as your grip. So this is a bottle and can, or a bottle and like jar opener. Grabs the lids, right? Gives you that ability to have additional strength in your grip and apply additional torque. Now I'm holding on to the stabilizer with this. See if we can now loosen this. We did. That loosened because I was able to hold the stabilizer down. Now I'm going to rotate the stabilizer and see what the weights are doing. And as I said, in some cases, the weights are bonded together. They're locked together essentially. And the screw comes out with the weights. If they're not locked together, you'll find that the screw will start to come back out and the weights will drop off. All right, so that's off. At this point, what you could do is, again, reinsert Allen wrench, keep that on the screw, and then you could turn the weights. So you can turn the weights and they start to fall off the screw. Simple as that. It really is. But you must follow certain processes that work to prevent damaging your products. That's really all it takes. I would say that if you already have one of these that is bonded together somehow and you've gotten it to the point where this is too tight in the QD connection and the whole thing's coming off, again, you use something like this. Maybe get two of these wraps, and get somebody to help you. Get someone to hold the QD, wrap that, get someone to hold the stabilizer, turn opposite directions, and this should pop free pretty easily. But don't manhandle it or use methods that are likely to cause damage. If you have additional questions, reach out to me, titaniumarcheryproducts.com. You can get a hold of me through Facebook, Instant Messenger, direct message on our Facebook Titanium Archery Products page. Obviously, Instagram is where I think we have our biggest influence, and we do a lot of our communication, so you can get a hold of me through there, ideally direct message, email, sam@titaniumarcheryproducts.com. I thank you guys for your time. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for putting up with us as we grow. It's 3 years now plus, and we have established that we are a dominant force in high performance products. Take care, everybody, and stay tapped out.